Hello, hello. Andryanna here. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Juggle is Real podcast, where we have Kelly Maiese back on the show. And if you recall, Kelly joined us last year to help us upgrade our self-talk. And it ended up being the most streamed episode of the Juggle is Real podcast last year. So of course, I had to have her back on the show, and she so graciously accepted my invitation because we've got to keep building, right? As a self leadership coach, Kelly helps her clients in building the life that they truly want. And she has done this herself. And it's just so beautiful to see people who are practicing what they preach. So, for this conversation with Kelly back on the show, we are going to build momentum for change this year. With Kelly, I'm going to be talking about indecision and how we can make better decisions, how we can learn to take action from a place of our goals and our values to gain clarity and really strengthen our self-leadership and that whole process of how we make decisions from a place of confidence and clarity. We're also going to talk about procrastination because those two topics often go hand in hand, and really looking at how we can free our mind space, lessen that mental load, add more time so that we can do the things that we truly want to be doing. And we don't have to be stuck in that loop of indecision and procrastination. And before we get started, because this conversation is absolutely incredible, and you are soon going to be saying the exact same thing, I want to let you know that to commemorate this beautiful experience of having Kelly back on the show, we are doing a special giveaway for the Juggle is Real listeners so that you can work with Kelly one-on-one to really strengthen yourself from within, improve your self-leadership, and gain that clarity on what you value. So head to the notes for this podcast episode because I'm giving away a couple of self-care planners, and Kelly is giving away a free hypnotherapy session, which I have done hypno with Kelly. It is a huge game changer, like incredible, incredible, incredible. She's also giving away a free one-on-one 60-minute coaching call, which also is so incredibly valuable and life-changing. So make sure you head to the notes for this podcast episode to quickly enter this giveaway. And now let's dive right in on today's episode. Hey, I'm Andryanna, and this is the Juggle is Real podcast. As I share my ongoing journey from experiencing burnout to leading a more mindful and intentional life with better balance, I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started. Before we get into today's episode, I have a really quick announcement for any of my local listeners who are based in Northern Ontario, because the Mini Pop Kids are coming to Sudbury this Saturday, February 17th. 5:30 p.m. at the Fraser Auditorium in Sudbury. The Mini Pop Kids are going to be live bringing those good vibes with their brand new high energy good vibes tour. So I'm going to be there. I would love to see you. It is a jam-packed concert, and it features all the songs that both children and parents love, from Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Olivia Rodrigo, Harry Styles, Ariana Grande, Dua Lipa, and even some of those throwbacks that I'm going to be dancing to. So it's not just a show, it truly is an experience that the whole family can enjoy. So be sure to grab your tickets now for the February 17th show, Mini Pop Kids in Sudbury at the Fraser Auditorium. And if you're not local to Sudbury, don't worry, because you can find them all across North America in this Good Vibes tour. I've included links for tickets for the Sudbury tour, as well as website links so you can find out when they will be visiting your city or town next. Now let's get back to the show. Ellie, welcome back to the Juggle is Real podcast. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you so much for joining us again. How are you? What is new?
I am great, and thank you for having me. It is my absolute pleasure to speak with you again. So much fun. Things are good with me. It's been a fun start to 2024. I am busy traveling and building my coaching business and loving all of it. And mostly that comes from being in a place of clarity and really moving forward with what I value and what I want and taking steps to create it.
Ah, this is so good. I mean, obviously, you're practicing what you preach, right? Because you are a self leadership coach and you're helping your clients gain clarity on what they value to create that self image that really supports them and guides them, just helps them move on, right? Move along with their days. And so, you have said that a major factor in stepping into this person who has clarity, who's really leading with that self leadership is to make decisions quickly. So before we
Yes.
get into how, because I know the listeners like, hey, just tell me how. Let's figure this out. But before we can learn the how, I want to talk about indecision and decision fatigue because you're a mom, you've got 3 boys, you get it. You recognize the weight, that mental load that goes into making all the decisions, not only for yourself, but for your family. And I feel like that's not often discussed is yes, we understand that there are a lot of tasks that moms, women especially are undertaking and the to-do list is long. But with that, we have so many decisions we have to be making on a daily basis. So talk to us about time and decision fatigue.
For sure, for sure. So I think it's important if you're talking about time and decision fatigue to sort of put like some visuals to that. So we all have the same amount of time in a day, right? And if you want to break it down, we have 24 hours a day, 168 hours a week, and 8,760 hours in a year. So what we all decide to do with that time is entirely up to us. And it differs for everybody. But when you're clear on what you value, you gain back time. And so,
Mm.
where you can lose time is if you're stuck in indecision. And indecision is really like, if you were to think about the definition, it's where you're caught in between one or two or more variables about which direction to take things in. So, yes, as parents, as moms with kids, and even in our careers and in our daily lives, there are so many decisions that are coming at us that we need to think about, consume, and make a call on. But sometimes those things get stuck and we end up doing nothing and we stay in a place of indecision. So when you can learn to be decisive and take action, you're moving forward and you're doing something and you're no longer stuck. Right. And when you do that, you're gaining back energy because that time when you are spending, should I do this? Should I do that? There's a whole lot of energy that is being spent on that indecision. So you're
Mm-hmm.
gaining back energy when you learn how to make decisions quickly. So I know you
Okay.
mentioned that there's lots of moms that are on the call. And when you're deciding for more than just yourself, you do get decision fatigue. You get tired. What's for dinner? What are we going to do today? What's happening on the PA day? And I'm not saying this only falls on moms because it doesn't. Like it's a shared load in all relationships. But those are all decisions that are constantly waiting for someone to act on. So sometimes you have to just take a moment and shift the focus from that running to-do list of everything that's gone on your plate and just be like, okay, what am I going to decide in this moment? And tick them off one at a time so that you don't have that overwhelm happening for yourself. And as you do that, you start to build momentum, right? And you start to make decisions. And that makes a big difference in terms of the overwhelmed feeling and feeling stuck. If you start to take small decisions, take the really easy ones that are just, they've been sitting there. It's a quick yes, no, just decide and move on and get them off your list. Does that make sense
Absolutely.
for you?
It does. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking like sometimes it's like even like, someone's asking you like, do you have plans this weekend? Do you want to get together? And, like some of these things we kind of know in the moment, like, you know what, I don't think I'm going to want to do that, or that I'm not interested in that, but I feel bad, or I don't
Mm,
know, like we'll see, like, but that it's a no, or what
yes.
the answer is, right? So
Yes.
sometimes we can make the decision quickly, because once the decision is made, then it's off our plate, right? But when we're stuck in the maybe we'll see, or I'll think about it, that's oftentimes where now we're adding another thing to our plate, another thing
Yeah.
that's kind of stuck in the back of our mind. And it reminds me of the scene in Alice in Wonderland with the Cheshire Cat. And I'm probably gonna mess up how it goes exactly, but where Alice is stuck sort of at that fork in the road, and she's like asking the cat, like, which path should I
Mm-hmm.
choose? And he's like, well, where do you want to go? And she says something along the lines of, like, I don't know. And the cat says, well, it doesn't matter where you go, right? And so I feel like a lot of
Yeah,
that is what you're supporting people with, because you're helping them gain that clarity. And so once you understand what your values are, what you're seeking the outcome to be, then the decisions can come a lot easier. So
for sure.
talk to us about maybe where we can get stuck, because you say that for many of us it's kind of like this loop where
Yes.
when it comes to how we make decisions, and then that leads to further indecision. And I know I've been there. So what is the
Yeah.
indecision loop, and how can it affect us?
Sure. So that is really when you're stuck debating in your mind what to do and you're not doing anything. And as you said earlier, I fully agree. If there is something that's coming up like a plans for Saturday night that you know is a no, just be kind to yourself and to that other person and just like be direct and say, I'm sorry, we're not available this weekend. Just get it off your plate, get it off of the things that you have to still do and respond to. If it's an easy yes or no, get it done, do the response, and you're actually being kind to everybody involved, right? Because no one's left hanging. And then with the indecision loop, it's the same thing. What does that look like? It's different for everybody, but maybe you're rethinking decisions. So you think you've made a decision, but now you're second guessing yourself, or you're trying to decide, I don't know, which sweater to buy. I know that's a silly example, but and you're asking for everybody else's opinion on which sweater to buy. I mean, really, you probably have a preference. Go with the preference that you have. You don't really need anybody else's opinion. It's really what you want. And so just make a decision and move forward. A lot of times you'll see people, and I get it, I've done it myself, doing pros and cons list. But
Yes.
maybe you have an opportunity to just sort of take a pause and be like, what do I want? Like, what feels like the right decision for me? And you're not creating all this extra work. And because you already know, you do know.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you are clear on that and what you want and what you value, this decision making process becomes much quicker. Or maybe you're the person who's changing your mind. That might be my 9-year-old. And we're going to talk a little bit about kids and helping them with their decision making in a bit. But, you know, if you make a decision, stick with it and just be good with the decision that you've made. There's no need to keep revisiting decisions. That's a waste of your time and your energy.
I
I think that's a
agree.
really huge time saver for people.
Yeah, and well, you know what? I think oftentimes the energy that we are, expending on things that we have no control over, whether you made that decision in the past or not, I mean, you can't really change what you've already done, right? So
No.
moving forward with the mindset and the affirmation of, it's going to work out. Things can change as we move forward, but why are we rehashing and going back to decisions that we've already made? I think that's such an
Yeah.
important part of it.
Yeah. It is very freeing when you make the decision to let go of regret.
Mm,
You gain back a whole lot of emotional energy when you are no longer spending your time and energy regretting past decisions. When you're
Yeah.
looking forward, you're taking action and you're moving towards what you want. Regret, that's a wasted emotion. You're not changing anything in the past. If you have something you need to do because of a decision and you feel there's communication that needs to be had, you should absolutely do that. But regretting decisions, do something if you want to change it, but don't spend your energy regretting decisions.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think some, to some degree, we've all been there. And now as we're moving
Yeah.
forward, we're learning, that this skill of decision making, because that's a distinction that you've shared with me that I really appreciate. Decision making is a skill.
It is.
And maybe we haven't been taught this. It's not like a subject in school or anything. So as we are honing in on decision making, we're going to save time, we're going to save energy, and we're just freeing up that space to take more aligned action with what we value, right? And so
Yeah.
I know this sounds like music to my ears. I'm sure the listeners like, yep, loving this. So the problem is the how. We haven't been taught how, and you're going to share this. So guide us through this. How can we
For sure.
learn to hone in on the skill and make better decisions, become good decision makers?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the one thing to remind yourself of is that, sure, we're not taught this as a skill in school. It is something that we have to practice, and it's something that we can refine, and you can always make new decisions moving forward. Unfortunately, we are socialized, most of us, to equate getting something wrong as being a mistake. Right. So there's an emotion behind making mistakes, and that is wrong. And that's taught in school. We learn that pretty early on. You're either getting an answer right or wrong. But when we're making decisions, we want to often, I think it's important to remove the emotion from the decision making. Assess the data, assess what's happening, like what is it that you're deciding, and then think about the risk and think about how you're feeling. Is it you're feeling a little bit afraid, so there's some fear, but that's a normal amount of fear, and you're going to make the decision anyways because there's growth on the other side? Or is it that you have a bigger decision to make in life? And we're going to talk about, like, there's different types of decisions that you're making, but for everyday life, when we're living our lives and we have our kids, these types of decisions, you can use these filters. Check in with how you're feeling, check in with your intuition, because your intuition is really there to guide you and to help you make decisions. So if you have a feeling of it's a no, why are you trying to convince yourself otherwise? Right? And
That's
then
so good.
there's right. And then neutralizing the emotion, instead of being like, okay, I'm either going to get this right or I'm going to get this wrong. What if you approached it as, I have a decision to make. I'm going to be curious about what the outcome is, and I'm going to see what happens, because either way, I'm taking a step and I'm going to get some feedback. Right. So you've taken out all the negative elements of that decision making. You're like, I will get feedback. I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to take a step. When you apply your goals and what you value as a layer on top of that as well, then you've kind of like narrowed in on where you're going, right? So instead of having a big wide spectrum, you have a narrower scope to make a decision from. And when you're aligning your goals and what you value, that decision making becomes very easy. And it also shows to people that you are confident.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
And
I think
go ahead.
sometimes we get stuck in the indecision because we're scared we're going to make the wrong decision. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
like there is no wrong decision. You can't get it wrong, right? There's no such thing as right or wrong. But in order to move forward, you have to make the decision. And so you can change along the way, but without having the decision made in the first place, you cannot move forward.
You're stuck and you've done nothing. And so making any decision is a move forward, right? It's growth. I
I
think
love
it's
that.
really important. A helpful question, if you're really stuck and you're sort of like, it's a bigger decision, think about what your goals are. And you and I have both learned this, is ask yourself, what would the person with my goal do? Right? So put yourself in that position of, okay, get out of my own head. What would the person with my goal do? And it might become much clearer for you.
I love what you're saying here. And especially the pause, like we don't have to spend days, do the
Yeah.
pros and cons list, but a brief pause to just tune in and to listen to our intuition. And there's been some really great episodes with guests on how to tap into our intuition. But
Yeah.
essentially, one of the key things that I got from my interview with Alicia Wood, so you can
Mm-hmm.
check that out a few episodes ago, was that our intuition is always speaking to us at the same level. It's always there. It's always trying to help us and guide us to make that decision. And it's always there. But when everything is so loud around us, we can't hear it, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's always there and at the same volume. So when our lives are busy, when things are maybe hectic or chaotic and there's a lot to do, we can't hear what is trying to guide us. So as soon as we can just pause, even for a moment, tune in, like try to just be quiet, be still for just a moment, then it's a lot easier for our intuition to help us in making that decision and guiding us to that next step. And that's often why, we get these ideas when we're in the shower or when we're driving without our kids screaming in the back seat, because we actually have a minute to slow down or for things to be a little bit quieter. So I love that you've pointed that out, that just a quick pause can really
Yeah.
support us in making a decision. So any other tips, any other things that you can share with the listener for effective decision making moving forward, both for ourselves in all the decisions we're making, but also in supporting our children? You mentioned you have a 9-year-old who might be a bit indecisive. So
Yes.
how can we move
So
forward with better decisions?
absolutely. I've definitely spent some time honing in on helping him with decision making. And I approach it as it's a skill. So what I do with him, because he will debate decisions, he will revisit decisions, and then there will sometimes be some regret at the end of a decision, is we approach it with curiosity, and I will allocate an amount of time for him to debate a decision. And I'll say, okay, we can talk about this, and then we're going to come to an answer, and we're not going to keep revisiting it, because I had to put some parameters around decision making for him. I'll also encourage him to try on the decisions and the various outcomes that will come with that. I think that's a really helpful way for them to sort of understand the reach of the decisions that they're making, so that they can see, visualize what would be happening if they make a certain decision. It's also really important, I found, if I ask him questions versus telling him the answers. So he has an idea of what he wants to do. Instead of saying, oh, well, don't do that because, I'll ask questions to get him to get to the answer of what that possible outcome might be for him, right? And it's much more impactful for him. And he's going to remember that as being something that he figured out on his own versus me telling him as his mother.
I love that. And I
Yeah.
think approaching it with curiosity for ourselves is key too, like
Yeah.
to be able to say like, oh, let's just try it on for a minute, or to put
Yep.
the parameters that, okay, you know what? I'm going to think about it. I'm going to give myself, 10 minutes, or if you still feel like you need to jot down pros and cons, fine. Let's give
Mhm.
ourselves a couple of minutes, have the conversation with someone if you need to, and then set that deadline or put that timer on, or
Yeah.
make yourself step forward in a way. I love that. And I love
Yeah.
how
And
you're asking questions to support your children in coming up with the answers themselves, because that's just going to support them in making decisions when you're not there. They'll have those questions that they
sure.
can ask themselves, and also in helping them understand that they can make the decision, right? Like they don't need you to make the decision for them, which really supports their
Absolutely.
independence. Yeah.
I mean, and let's be real here. I am still practicing that skill because sometimes I just want to tell them how to do it.
Yeah, same,
But,
same.
you
Yeah.
know, on the really patient moments, there are questions to help them get to the answer themselves. And it's way more effective than telling them what to do. And I think the other thing with kids is, just help them to neutralize the decisions. So for my son, it can seem really big, and it can feel like a really big deal. So sometimes if you can help them to remove some of that emotion from the decision, it is easier for them to take the steps. I was funny. We last night on the way home, he needed to buy a small gift for a secret exchange in the classroom. And, I have to have patience for these things, but I wanted him to decide. But he will debate the gift. Like we could have been in there for an hour
Yeah.
just trying to select a small gift. So I had to put some parameters around it. We had to talk about the objective of the gift and, what that person would value and make a decision from there. Yeah, it's helpful.
Is helpful. I have a friend who like it would take her so long to just decide on what she was going to order off a menu at a restaurant to the
Ooh.
point where she would usually just order something from the kids menu after she would read every single item on the menu. And so, we don't realize, I mean, we laugh about it now, but she was stuck whereas like she knows what she enjoys, if she chooses something else she can always order something else. And but it's interesting how we can get stuck sometimes we don't even realize, and how much time and energy that we're really expending on things that we can clear up and clean up really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So I
I mean,
appreciate that. And
I've certainly sat in front of a menu and really debated what I wanted to have. And I find it frustrating because typically I'm a decisive person, but we do have our moments, and just go back to your values. What do I want? What do I value? Is choosing the French fries and burger, like, is that what I want? Or is having the salad more aligned with where I'm going with my goals? And that's a conversation that will happen in my head.
yeah, and the answer can change depending, the
It
days can
will.
change, and it can have the benefits that you need them to have on that day. And I'm laughing because I'm actually just thinking now too, dropping my 2-year-old off at nursery school. I let him choose his own little cubby, his little locker. And this morning he was like hemming and hawing, like they are all identical. There's no difference between them. And he was like looking at each one and like really like making this decision was a big choice for him in his morning. And so like it's so sweet and it's so cute. And he chose one.
Mhm.
He made the choice. He stuck with it, put his boots in there and coat in there. But these are things that we're doing every day. And the more we can support ourselves and then support our family with it, the better we're all off. And I know you were kind of telling me you recently had an experience sort of in these everyday moments that ended up being pretty exceptional. And you can now say, having this experience, that you attribute the quick decision you made based on your values to making this everyday thing pretty cool. So can you share this story with us and
Can, for
how
sure.
decision making supported you?
So the family was all up for passport renewals, and I decided to take that task on. So I had a stack of, well, not my husband's, but I had myself and the kids, all of our passports. And I went down to the passport office, and I'm sitting there, and I've got a seat, and it's looking like it's going to be a long wait. And so in walks this man, and he's wheeling a suitcase. And I think, and he sits one person away from me. And I'm like, gosh, looks like Chris Hadfield, the astronaut. And I'm like, but what on earth would he be doing at the passport office? Like, surely if you're an astronaut, you're not going to the passport office, right?
He has some
And so,
special like astronaut office or
right. And it was a blue
space.
passport. So I'm like, isn't it special? Like, exactly. These were all the questions that were happening. And so then I'm like looking, trying not to stare, trying to be polite, trying to respect his space, but I'm so curious and I really want to know if it's him. And I Google pictures of him and I look at the pictures. He's one over. And I'm like, it's definitely him. I want to ask him. But I don't want to put myself out there too much because then I'll feel really uncomfortable. But I was like, okay, what do I want in this moment? I'm sitting in the passport office. I think Chris Hadfield's sitting right there beside me. I want to know if it's him. And I want to just say, wow, like I've been wowed by his accomplishments. My kids and I have read his books. I actually read his subsequent book that he read. It's called An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. It's excellent. And I really admire the man. So instead of having this narrative going in my head of, I'm too shy, I should leave him alone, he just wants to do his own thing. I think I recognize everyone. It's not Chris Hadfield. I'm just thinking that. I was like, no, you know what? What I really want to know is if it's him. I think it's him. And how will I feel if I don't do anything about this? If I just sit here quietly, like everybody else, they were all staring at him and say nothing. And I was like, I'm going to feel really disappointed if I don't act on this, if I don't ask him if it's him. So I did. And so I said, excuse me, is your first name Chris? And he responded, yes, it is. And he kind of had a chuckle. To be honest, I wasn't sure how you were supposed to address an astronaut. I knew that they had titles, and I was like, am I being inappropriate? So I'll just use his first name. And he was very kind, and he shared all sorts of things with me. I got to speak with him for 90 minutes and ask him all the questions I ever had about being an astronaut and outer space and what his favorite parts were. And I could have missed that opportunity altogether if I had stayed in my head, if I had let that feeling, there was a feeling of fear to ask him because I was uncomfortable putting myself out there. If I had let that rule, then I wouldn't have made the decision to ask and I would have missed out on that beautiful conversation. So I encourage you all, like, check in with how you're feeling and then see, like, is it fear because I feel slightly uncomfortable, but I know there's something amazing on the other side of that? Or is it fear that's legitimate and you really need to give it some more thought and structure to the decision that you're making? I think that's a great guideline for making decisions.
Absolutely. Whether you're speaking to an astronaut or you're trying to decide on what that next step is in your journey, like how beautiful is it to know that you moved forward in a way that was aligned with your values and your goals and how you see yourself, your self-image. And what a beautiful gift to have had that experience. And I'm sure your kids thought you were the coolest mom after when you got to say you were hanging out with an astronaut at the
I
passport
mean,
office, which really is not one of the places most people want to be hanging out, right?
yes. And I could have stayed, just to put context and time to it, I could have stayed in that indecision loop for the 90 minutes that we waited together. But instead, I had the best conversation and he was so kind. So I encourage people, get clear on what you want, what you value, and then, just start asking for it and start making decisions from that place. It's very
Yes.
powerful.
Yeah. I think this is the perfect segue because I want to talk about procrastination a little bit
Mm.
because, indecision and procrastination, they often go hand in hand in my experience. And so, talk to us about procrastination. Like, what is it? How can it show up? I feel like this was kind of a good example, but it shows up often. So, what is procrastination and how does it look for us?
I mean, I feel like everybody has some procrastination tendencies in them. I certainly do. And the way it shows up for us is very different. But if you have certain tasks that you are wanting to accomplish that are high on your list of priorities, and you are delaying those tasks with things that are less important, less urgent, and taking your time, then you are probably procrastinating. So it can take many forms. But, I did it myself on the weekend. I was like, okay, I get up really early and the sun is always shining in the window and it's a beautiful time to sit at my desk and do work. And it was mild on the weekend. And I was like, okay, I've got some quiet time, some focus time. I'm going to do my work. But then the sun was shining on the windows and I could see all the dirt from winter on the windows. And I quickly decided that I was going to wash the windows instead of doing the work that I had allocated for that slot of time that I really love. So, was it effective? Yes. Did I get a task done? Yes. Was I planning to do that? Absolutely not. I figured out a way to do something else that was less important with my time. I was procrastinating on the thing that I really wanted to do in the morning. So, these things show up all the time. And, that's a productive example of procrastination. But, the amount of time that we all, I think, spend on our phones when we don't need to be, when we are distracted,
Mhm.
and not truly present in what we're doing in that moment is also a really telling indicator of where your time is going and how you might be procrastinating.
Yeah, I'd say guilty on those fronts for
Me
sure.
too.
Sundays, my phone tells me how long I've been spending on my phone. And then sometimes I'm
Yes.
like, oh my goodness, that I like, and when you see it all added up like that, you're like, the things I could have accomplished in
Yeah.
that amount of time. But
Yeah.
I also think that it's interesting how procrastination can creep up. And I'm reminded in this moment of a case study that was I believe in the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And
Mm.
he was helping one of his clients who was an author who had already written a book. but was having a very hard time in actually writing her next novel. And she had, I think, 3 or 4 children at the time. She ran her household and her husband worked out of the home. And she was having a hard time in creating space, creating the time to actually sit down and
Yeah.
write. And so the steps that Gay Hendricks explained to her was like, okay, so what is most important to you? Like, if you had to order it, like, what is it that you're doing in a day? She listed it all out. And then, okay, what is the order of what you're doing? And so he's like, okay, so according to your list, the most important thing to you in your life is to empty the dishwasher and tidy the kitchen. Is that correct? And she's like, no, that is not the most important thing. Like,
Yeah.
my children and being an author and writing, that's the most important thing. He's like, okay, well then why are you emptying the dishwasher, tidying the kitchen, yada, 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 before you're writing? And so for
Mhm.
her, it was to, like you're saying, stop procrastinating, using those filler, that busy time. And yes, I'm not saying these things don't have to get done, because they do, but how are you allocating the hours that you have in order to make the most important things your priority? And I know that
Totally
we
agree.
can talk about that all day. We could talk about that. That could be the next time you're on the show. I feel like you could tell us more
Mm.
about that. But like, how can we stop procrastinating? You say that we can build new habits, and that's
Yeah.
one of the better ways to sort of end the procrastination spiral. So how can we do this?
So, as I use the example of scrolling on phones a little too much, I have created some habits for myself. And the habits can be different for everybody. But one of the things that I'm really disciplined about now is I don't turn my phone on until after typically I drop my son off at school, because it's too easy to get distracted. I'm easily distractible. I do know that about myself now. So I just don't turn it on in the mornings. If I have email that I need to be addressing, it's there. Or if there are other things, people can reach me, but I don't want to be on social media in the mornings. And so I typically just don't. That's my time for my family, is getting everybody out the door so that I can have a nice focused day for myself when they're all at school and at work. The other thing I'll do is I'll put my phone on do not disturb. I think that is like my best hack ever. And I do that when I'm working. So I'm not getting the phone calls, I'm not getting the texts, and I'm not looking at email. So I am not making it easy for me to be distracted by other things that might be going on. Because there are often, as we have lots of other people in our lives, people looking for things from us, when what I want to do is focus on my work and the goals that I've set out for myself for that day, versus solving all the other problems that will get solved, but they don't need to be solved in the time that I've allocated for my work. And those are a couple of the things. And then the other one is, we referred to it earlier, is if I have a big list of things that need to get done and I can pick off some of those things really quickly and give myself a sense of accomplishment, because I've given myself some mental relief that I've made that list smaller, I will sometimes do that. I'll be like, okay, I'm just going to get a whole bunch of stuff done and off the list so that I'm not thinking about it anymore. And then when it's off the list, I really have trained myself to not be thinking about those things.
Ah, this is so good. I made the decision to remove all notifications from my phone
Yes.
a couple of years ago. That was the most freeing thing. Like, I wasn't seeing the text messages come in. I wasn't seeing
Yeah.
900 group chat notes. I wasn't
Yeah.
seeing, any type of social media notification. And it allows me to feel like I have more control over when I choose to check that, when I choose to look at it, when I choose to make time, because I do. I enjoy social media. I enjoy connecting through, group chats and text messaging and all that sort of stuff. But I did, just like you, I found myself being so distracted. And anytime I saw like a little light flash or do 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 do, I'd
Right.
be like,
Yeah.
oh, I better check. Oh, I better look at
Yeah.
that. And I
Yeah.
do that with email too when I'm at my desk. Like, I will turn my email off because I'll be working on something. And then if I hear the ping of the email, I'm like, I'm trying, oh, I don't need to, I don't, oh, I'm just going to check and see. And it's like, oh, some like random sale is happening at some store that I never shop at
Oh,
anyway. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm so glad that I'm now completely distracted. My focus is lost. So I appreciate how, making these decisions again, choosing how we want to move forward and creating these small habits, these small little ways that we can make it easier for ourselves to do what we need to do. And,
totally.
you know, as we close, like we had the best discussion last year on The Juggle is Real, on upgrading our self-talk. And it was so helpful for me and so many listeners. In fact, it was the most streamed episode of 2023 for the Juggle is Real podcast. And so
Oh,
in the beginning, I know it was such a great chat. In the beginning of this discussion today, you shared that being clear on your values makes a huge impact and shapes how we see ourselves. So, can you just share some more on this? How can we take action to create that self image that supports us and lessens indecision and procrastination?
yeah, I think like as you build your self-awareness and as you curate your self-leadership in terms of the decisions that you're making, as you spend time clarifying what you value and you become really aware of the narrative that's going on in your head, and you take a conscious effort to shift the negativity out, and you're really aware of your mindset, you begin to think and feel and act differently in everything that you're doing. So you're up leveling everything that's going on in your life, and then your perspective on what is happening in your life is different, right? And so when you have that attitude, when you are really self-aware of what you want, if you are making decisions from the place of what you want, and if you are using your values and your goals as your guidelines to make decisions, then you are really creating a very aligned and powerful path towards what it is that you want to create. They all go hand in hand together, and they all require effort. Like you have to be committed to your personal development, your personal growth. And when you approach it with curiosity and with an attitude of growth, then you will continue to grow and be of service and add value to everybody in your life. And that decision making becomes so much clearer for you because you're doing what you want to do. You're not being selfish, but you are creating more of what you want to do. Does that
Mm,
make sense?
absolutely. And I just see how you've been able to change your lives and the lives of your clients, and the growth that comes from it. It's something that happens internally, but it's something that everyone can see. And knowing that you are really aligned in following your purpose and choosing things that are based on who you are stepping into, I think that's the most beautiful thing. And it allows other people to do the same. And it gives them permission to be that version of themselves that they have always envisioned and perhaps are stuck in indecision or fearful to take that next step. And so you're really and truly only allowing it for others when you allow it for yourself, which I
Yeah.
think that's so beautiful.
It is amazing. And I was at a conference last month, and there was really a theme to it in terms of like building up and having that clarity and that belief and confidence in yourself and in what you want. And so I think that as people become more aware of that and as they create more of that clarity for themselves, they create more of what they want.
And you know what? If you're listening and you're like, this sounds all really great, but I don't have that clarity, or I'm not quite sure, maybe you need a little bit of support. Maybe you want to hone in on the decision making. I'm going to put some notes for how you can connect with Kelly in the notes for this podcast episode, because we know that she's going to help guide you there. So,
Uh,
Kelly, thank you so much for being
oh,
here.
you're so welcome.
One final question I like to ask guests is kind of
Mm-hmm.
about their ongoing journey. And you know me, I love that authentic self care, and you lead a full life. You wear many hats, and the juggle is certainly real in your life. So, how do you consciously choose authentic self care practices for yourself so that you can better manage everything on your plate? Just to close, I'd love to hear one thing that you are doing and one thing that you are not doing, or something that you're saying no to help you feel better balance in your life.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm doing is that I continually practice being neutral in my life. And I
Mm.
know that I can be an emotional person. And so I am very aware of responding versus reacting. And when I am neutral in everything that I'm doing, I think that I'm creating and being a person that I like a lot more.
I like that. So how
Yeah.
would that show up? Like, if any example off the top of your head?
So an example would be um, pausing, So giving myself a moment to pause versus just immediately reacting to what's happening in front of me. I think it does a lot for myself, and it does a lot for, I'll use just my family, a lot for my family when I take a moment to pause and I respond from a place of thought versus from a place of emotion and reacting.
Mhm. Been there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Neutrality. I love that.
It's powerful. It's powerful. And you have to practice it. I'm still like, it's an ongoing practice for me.
But
Yeah.
to say that and to be aware of wanting to make that change, I think in every instance where you do take that pause, you're just like, I did it. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm
And
so grateful for how I chose to respond. Or in the moment where maybe you did react, you're like, oh, I forgot the pause. Next time I'll know. Right.
yes. And I will say, a great way, and I'm hoping that your listeners are familiar with your book because, when you break it down into your 5 pillars, it's amazing. You are really ticking off all the boxes on how you can be doing things to take care of yourself. It's powerful. And it's so, I mean, I benefit from the structure of it, right? I like having, I refer to it sort of like guardrails in terms of structure and in terms of decision making and planning. I like that structure, and it's so helpful. One of the things I'm not doing is I am not feeling guilty anymore. I let that go. you know I feel like it's something that kind of comes. I feel like I always had the guilt, and then when I had kids, the guilt sort of, there was more guilt feelings happening in my life. And I've let it go. Again, I feel it's a wasted emotion, and I don't need to be spending my energy feeling guilty about things, because if I'm really confident in my decisions and they're aligned with my values, then there really isn't room for guilt.
No room. No
Yeah.
room. I love that. And thank you for showing the Juggle is Real
Oh
Authentic
my
Self Care
gosh, I
Planner.
love this.
This is
I love
beautiful.
this.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate your time. Thank you for spending some time with us. And you know what? Let's get ready for the next chat. Like let's put something else in the
Love
books
it.
here, Kelly.
I'd love it. It's been
Awesome.
a pleasure. Always so nice to see you, talk to you, share, bounce ideas back and forth. It's been great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, what else can I say except that was beautiful. I love spending time with Kelly, and I've received so much great insight that has really impacted my life. And I hope this conversation helped you gain that clarity, maybe understand how you can nip procrastination in the bud, stop that indecision loop, and make choices from a place of aligned action from your values and your goals. Now, if you could use a little bit of help, there's ways to connect with Kelly in the notes for this podcast episode. And don't forget, we are doing a giveaway where 2 lucky listeners will receive a beautiful prize pack to support you in this new light of making decisions and gaining the clarity and moving towards a path of better balance that is aligned with your goals. So be sure to head to the notes for this podcast episode to enter. Really quick, easy entry. So don't worry about that. It's not going to take a lot of extra time. And I would so appreciate if you've gained those insights, if you found value from this episode, that you could share it with a friend, that you could rate this episode and write me a short review in Apple Podcasts, because that is how we can reach others and help them in leading a more mindful and intentional life with better balance. Until the next episode of The Juggle is Real, I send you so much love. Take good care.